what we are observing is a bit of sell-off and panic entering the market. The market is down 5%, and we can observe that Bitcoin itself is down close to 5%. Ether is down 7. Now, if we actually look at the price action, you kind of get an idea like, okay, XRP is doing that corrective action, which we were talking about for some time. And now we are doing that third leg down. So A, B, and C. Look at the RSI. If the RSI is reaching the support level and consolidating, we can expect that we reached the bottom. But yes, that's going to be painful to watch if you are in this for the short run. But if you observe the fact that Bitcoin is slowing down and dropping, you also would have noticed the fact that we were already looking at this thought process. Okay, Ether is here. I think we're going to drop and then move higher, right? A couple of days back, I even highlighted this in the group saying, don't hurry up. Ether is showing a possibility of test of the 21-day moving average. So if we are looking at that, 21-day moving average here is down. So 1930, 1920, somewhere close to that it should be. And right now, if you actually go look at what the market is doing, you'll actually understand the fact that, okay, Ether is dropping and Ether is coming close to that level. But we need to understand whether that's the bottom or do we have more room to go? Because this was the thought process for Bitcoin. Like, we are at a resistance. We may actually come back down. That's nothing bad because it's still inside the macro trend. And then it's going to bounce off. And that's where a lot of people would go say, I shouldn't have done that, right? So ye should be observing this clearly. So if you understand the fact that, okay, we are going to a support from where we are going to bounce hard, don't miss that opportunity. One, it can be a short-term support. Two, it can be a macro support. We'll have to sit there and understand how things are evolving. Welcome to the Scientific Investor family, where the normal retail guys learn how to become the next top 10% of this world. Right now, the macro is changing so much. People are getting confused, but this is clear if you are looking for the big picture. If you are looking at what the hell is happening all around the globe, now you have a giant portfolio growth that is coming ahead actually, if you know what's happening. Right now, it does show you like things are changing, and if you are on the right side of it, it's going to be really healthy for your portfolio. Now, why do I say that? See, while we were discussing in the previous video here, saying, okay, we usually do this, right? You have an average trend line, you move up, down, you do this, right? And we were saying, okay, Bitcoin is about to move down, right? It can be the level 1 support there, or it can be the level 2 support, which can actually go back down to the critical range here. And right now in the market, we observe the fact that, okay, that's happening. But this is still in April. We are looking forward to what? May. And if you look at the May scenario, it kind of gives you an idea like, okay, 67% of time, May is green. Now, if you try to break that down a little bit, inside that 9 May, which we are looking at right now, you'll see like, okay, back in 2014, it was a downtrend. We actually did a bull run. We were going down. So it really doesn't count. Even though inside that bear market, it was still green, it really doesn't count because that was not starting to trend back up. Great. Now you look at the next one. Okay, that was like, okay, we kind of bottom. We are trying to bounce off. So that kind of goes in. Now you are in the same trend to the upside. You're in the same trend to the upside. So all the way from 2016, 2017, it's in. Then in 2018, we already topped off, right? So we were coming down. So that May was in red. But if you actually look for every time when we were coming to a real bottom and bouncing off from that macro bottom, these May were kind of positive. So don't go panicking saying, okay, we are going to actually go into a bear market in this May, because the chances for that looks bleak. If the history suggests like, okay, entirely it's 67%, and if you just look for the bull market, it's like 90%, 95% to the upside. So now you come into Bitcoin to see like, okay, whenever you are bouncing and trying to make through a new trend, like what we are doing here actually, that month happens to be a green month, and some of these times that candle happens to be bigger than last 2-3 candles. So if that monthly candle is coming, that means we may get some consolidation here in April. That doesn't matter because we've been going up, 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 and we are getting some consolidation. Remember, even with this correction in the market right here, you'll still see assets doing 3, 4, 5, 10x in last quarter. And this is in the same market. You'll actually literally see all of these assets moving out in that tandem, like they are all moving up in that trend. Now, if you are generally looking at the market and saying like, okay, I kind of get the point. Okay, we're coming back to a short-term support. If we bounce off, that's great. If not, we are going for the macro. So you take the same perspective and then you can move on to XRP, because it does show you like, okay, right now, XRP on a weekly shows us the fact that we are actually going in a correction. We may actually bounce off. And that nano three-wave structure can actually be a micro wave 1 structure, which then would be a macro wave structure, right? It looks confusing, but if you actually break it down, try to understand like, okay, what we are looking at is that the RSI should come back down, and when it come back down, it should respect this trend line support. This exists all the way from 2022 June. So right now, we are kind of like, a year into that trend line and we are still respecting that level. So most likely, we are going to bounce off from there. So while we look at the XRP market, we'll also keep an eye on the altcoin market and whatever we have discussed. And we'll come back here on a macro chart for XRP, understanding the fact that XRP actually had a great month. So that was really good, watching the March month blow off, erasing all of these previous candles. That's really good. Now, what we really want to observe in this asset is like, okay, you go in, zoom in, and you're looking for the corrective angles to say like, okay, we are in a corrective direction, but we understand the fact that we have a trend like this. So if we kind of go and zoom in and try to put all these bottoms together, you now have a range like, okay, mostly you're going to hold on to a range like this where your standard deviation can be a wick to the downside, or your upside standard deviation seems a little bit non-linear, right? It's kind of going somewhere else. Now, while you actually understand the pattern, like, okay, that may not be a coherent one, we still have something at the bottom. But right now, we have already reached the level 1 range, and if we assume that this level of support is going to be valid, then we want to see a bounce off here. So that's a daily chart. Now, first thing to understand is we want to see whether this is coherent with the macro scenario. So yeah, we are going to smoothen the curve. We're going to go into a Heikin Ashi, then come back into that chart. Now, if you actually look at a 3-day chart, you'll observe like, okay, we are here in the top range. We are slowing down for sure, and the trend line support happens to be somewhere down here. So we have some room to come back to the downside if we are following that, right? That's a little bit more macro. Imagine XRP is going to drop hard and it's going to come down to this level and then bounce off. Now we need to go back in history and ask ourselves like, okay, fine. If XRP is about to do that leg of correction in the RSI here, we would really like to know what happened back here, because there is a lot of similarity with what's happening now and what happened previously here. So while we zoom in, we understand the fact that at first we kind of respected that level, but then we broke lower, right? So the RSI, the strength actually broke lower. You kind of got like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the downside. That is still a possibility in here. But what we have to keep in mind is that even during that time, price actually respected that range as a support. So yes, the strength was dropping, but the price was not. It actually held this particular level. So if we put that perspective here, we're going to look for like 0.42, 0.43, that range as a zone of support. That's going to be a great range to observe a bounce, because if we do, now we are looking at a parabolic run to the upside. Imagine XRP is about to come back down, test here, and then do this bounce. Now, it can be a little bit different. You can actually do this structure here, corrective moves, and then bounce off, which would just take a little bit more time. But if you follow the history of how XRP moves, that's kind of inconsistent with that, because whenever XRP moves, the move is sharp, right? You follow the pattern in entire XRP moves historically, not just, one or two runs here and there. You look for what XRP does when it actually bounces off from a support. It's all sharp run, not only in the last market cycle. You go back in history and you understand somehow, for some reason, this asset actually behaves like this. It kind of goes up, it blows up. So if you actually measure this, you're like, okay, massive ROI structure, maybe 80x in those two legs to the upside with a little bit of correction in between. So yeah, kind of 80x. And if you actually now look at what happened in between, that's like a 12x run up first, a correction, and then another 16x. So if you are trying to take that first leg out, you may actually miss out on a big leg, because that's where we are right now, in my opinion. Because I think if you're able to bounce through breaking this level of 0.55, 0.56, now you are looking for something big. Now, one of the reasons for that is we can always go back, use a lot of different tools. So when you are looking at the charts on a short-term horizon, you look for anomalies in the market. And one of the easiest tool to use to understand what kind of anomalies is happening in the market, you can actually use a fib. Now, it's not perfect. Say, while you're using that here, if you were about to take profit, you would have taken that a little bit earlier. Say, if you put that into perspective, say, if you are jumping out, that still is a decent profit. But if not, the price actually went up way above that. You got the point? Now you actually take in this top to this bottom, and the price actually went nuts. The price actually went like 30x, but the fib was showing us 11x. But you still get the idea. If fib is showing something like that on the short term, XRP historically goes way beyond and above that. So now we are here. We want to actually see how the recent past is working out for XRP. And we understand the fact that, okay, this time it was lower. The first run up. The next one kind of matched with that. So that was like, okay, that was a great call by the fib. Now, if you actually plot the next rally here, it kind of misses the point. Why? Because we got the SEC volatility. Otherwise, it would have been kind of great. Now, if you take that perspective and say, okay, we are going to follow the recent past, most likely we're going to stay in that range, then this rally is not over. We are literally looking for XRP to come somewhere close to $1.2, say $1, $1.2 range. And that would be something similar to what we just discussed here. Like, you're going to have this pattern and then you're going to bounce off. So yes, history does show you how you can take benefit of these opportunities in the market. And the market does show you like there's a lot of different assets which are right now testing a macro support, which means if you are historically looking for strong assets, say if you are going to look at H bar, which is another payment asset, it kind of shows you the narrative like, okay, I'm doing something like this. Great. So you are looking at the RSI and you're like, okay, fine. What we are observing right now is it's testing this range. That's the horizontal support in the RSI. But the trend line actually shows, okay, you can still come back lower. So here I am sitting looking at the H bar and I'm like, okay, if that's true, then the RSI does suggest me that there is going to be a next level to the downside, right? That's what the price is suggesting you. So if you break the 0.57 level, most likely you are going to revisit the 0.508, which is the previous resistance here, turning into a new support. That's what we are looking at. If that happens, Now that means you're kind of following the history. You went up, the first leg up, you consolidated, you came back down, and then you bounced off. So we are literally observing the market for what it is and trying to understand where it actually goes from here. Because if we actually follow the trend line on the macro, it's going to be really bullish. Say you go look at XDC, it's another payment asset. Now, these are coins which are kind of correlated in terms of the target market, but we saw like XDC went nuts in the last market cycle, like Quant. Remember when we were calling out Quant on like $5, $6, and not a lot of people actually gave attention to it. Then we were calling to take profits somewhere around $300. Now, yes, it actually went to 400, but by 320, 330, we were calling, okay, take some profits. It's better because you started from $1.3 and you went up to like $400. So it's better to take some profits, right? Now you're looking for the same asset here and it shows you like, okay, there is some issues. See here, even though it's a payment asset, it is trending lower. So that does not look much good. And if you're looking for the trend, it's showing you like, okay, I'm breaking lower. That doesn't actually look good. Now you want to follow up with the RSI and it shows you I'm breaking lower. So even on a macro level, you would actually say like, okay, there is some issues with Quant. The price may actually drop here. So if you are there looking at this asset, okay, take some profits. It's going to be better that way. The market actually went up too much. And right now it's slowing down and dropping. Now you do have a pattern structure here, but if you break this level of 93, that's invalidated. You're now going down, right? You're going for another pattern which actually looks opposite. So you don't want to be in that side of the market. Now, coming back to something which is closely following XRP, that would be XLM. Now, if you actually look at XLM right now, it does show a ton more of opportunity. Now, why do I say that? Because when you actually look at XRP here, you do have this resistance level, which you actually happen to broke. Which literally looks like it's broken. So right now, when you follow that level, you can also put the point that, yeah, the market can actually come back and the RSI is about to test this level. But after that, what do you expect the market to do? It most likely is going to run to the upside. Now, if that is the case, then we are going to see the price rallying to the upside. Now, one of the primary thing we all have to understand is last time, say the first rally was like 170%, the next one was like 98%, and then you actually got next leg, which was 240%. Now you corrected back down, but if you actually held on to it, the market actually did a 10x after that, right? So right now, XLM is showing us a structure where the market is only doing this. Now, we don't know whether this is going to be the bottom or it's going to come back down, but right now it's here. So if you want to anticipate what the hell the market is doing, you would most likely look for the previous level of support, which turned into a resistance. Now it should act as a support. Basic sense, right? The common sense. So if that's true, then okay, a bounce from this literal support is going to be a massive run for this asset. Now, yes, until you get a trend confirmation on the short term, you're not jumping in, right? You're trying to average down if you're a macro long-term investor on this asset. If you're a short-term guy, you're waiting for the trend confirmation. So now you get the A, B, C pattern happening. You are already reaching close to the level of support, which looks long-term viability, right? It does look like it's viable long-term if you're actually looking for this asset. Now, take all this and go to another segment of the market. It can be like, say, smart contracts, Cardano. Now, it does look like, okay, the price is actually making a higher high, which looks good, but the RSI has actually made a lower high. So now you're like, okay, short term, that does not actually look good. Now we are moving on to a 3-day chart. You want to actually see the macro perspective. And here we are. The macro kind of shows you you're at that level. You haven't actually decided whether you're going to break higher or run down, right? You're flirting with that level. However, the RSI is kind of following the price action. You're making a higher high. So it's good for the time being. But what you can expect the market do is to come back to this trend line and then bounce off. So in terms of price, that would look something like this. It can actually come down a little bit more and then bounce off. Now, yes, it all depends on what Bitcoin as an asset does inside this market. So following Bitcoin is going to be another struggle here, right? Bitcoin just made like a huge candle to the downside on the daily, which kind of engulfs all these previous moves. And if we go back, looking at when we got something similar, that would look like, okay, that's a move which we got here, which was right to the support. Then the next one here. So we literally got like two moves, in which one was an ABC pattern and one was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, what's in common inside this? Like, if you want to know, like, okay, are we going to do a ABC? Are we going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Right? These are the two possibilities which we actually discussed in this video here. So if you actually watch that, you now have a better understanding. So basically what we are looking at is like, okay, here we did 1, 2, 3, and now that's not the perfect structure, but you still get the point. Like, you tried 3 impulse, and inside that impulse, this one happens to be an ABC because your trend was still another leg to the upside. Great. Now, after your consolidation, now we have actually done this next leg to the upside. So again, you got one move to the upside, you corrected back down, you did another one, you now push through. So when you're correcting back down, now you may actually have a possibility to say like, okay, we may actually do something like this in the market. We cannot actually neglect that. But that's a 3-day or that's a daily chart. But as soon as you actually go onto a macro chart, say a 3-day chart or a weekly chart, now it's a little bit more clear to say, okay, the argument that the price may come back to 25,000 shouldn't be neglected. However, the market is kind of crazy, right? We understand the fact that market is crazy. And when it actually breaks through and goes somewhere else, it usually does not come back down to test the exact breakout point. At least in the terms of Bitcoin macro, it does not. It does not give you another opportunity to buy at that lows. Because we go back in history and check all of these ranges where we broke higher, we never came back before a big run up. Yes, after the first run up, you came back down to test that bottom. But you actually went from 4,000 to 14,000 before that happened. So right now, here we are sitting here and saying like, okay, we had a breakout to the downside, which right now we have retested. So that looks actually okay. The way we see like, okay, we broke this level, we're coming back to retest this level. That's actually a key level to watch. So if we make another leg here in between 25, 26,000, that is going to be healthy. But now we are watching this market in a way that we understand, okay, the week is really looking deep in bear's hand, and we want to see where this market actually goes. So the weekly candle close is going to be really important, but what we have to keep in mind is the last candle, 3-day candle close, was an inverted hammer, which kind of suggested as the fact that we are going to the downside, and then it happens to come back down, which actually kind of follows through what we talked here. So the narrative is changing in short term. The narrative is not changing in the macro, because the macro still is ultra bullish. So don't misunderstand the fact that the market is going down or going up. You need to look for the short term and macro perspective and decide what you're going to do. Because right here, right now in the market, when Bitcoin pushes these prices down, you are going to see a lot of opportunities coming in your way. This can be like, one way or the other, one asset or the other. It can be the payments, it can be the metaverse, it can be the smart contracts. In any segment, it can be an opportunity. You need to look for the fundamentals, the liquidity, and basically how easy is it to get into that asset. If it's just in 1 or 2 assets, which is so hard to find, it's going to be really, really hard to make money and to take that money out. Basic sense, right? So make sure you understand that fact. And that's what we actually try to do in the group. So if you are interested in that, you can look at the Patreon. The link is given in the description below, where we go through all these facts. Because if you are prepared, now you're buying the dips. Now you're looking for supports to buy the assets which you really want to accumulate more and more. So guys, if you received value for your time, please hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't done that already. I'll meet you guys on the next video. Bye for now.